Hello and welcome back to the ninth video on the detailed analysis of The Laugh of the Medusa by Helene Sisu. Let me continue reading from the essay itself. Nearly the entire history of writing is confounded with the history of reason, of which it is at once the effect, the support, and one of the privileged alibis. It has been one with the phallocentric tradition. It is indeed that same self-admiring, self-stimulating, self-regulatory phallocentrism. Very important. See, so means it in I think it is in a very satirical, sarcastic manner she refers here. That is self-admiring, self-stimulating, self-congratulatory. That's it. Self-congratulatory phallocentrism. Sorry if I have mispronounced it. Self-congratulatory. That is, you're congratulating yourself, but you think that everyone else is congratulating. But the problem is with the history of reason that has always been with this phallocentrism, and no one could actually challenge that till date. Not now, or not even at the advent of feminism, the empowerment, at least the thought when it evoked in women folk, a group of women activists. But till date, it didn't happen. That is, it was almost always with this history of reason. Everything was completely, reason and phallocentrism went very well together, so that no one else could ask or at least question something against that. With some exceptions, for there have been failures, and if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be writing. I, woman, escapee, within brackets she gives here, in that enormous machine that has been operating and turning out its truth for centuries. There have been poets who would go to any lengths to sip something by at odds with the tradition, men capable of loving love and hence capable of loving others and of wanting them, of imagining the woman who would hold out against oppression and constitute herself as a superb, equal, hence impossible subject, untenable in a real social framework. So here, there have been poets who would go to any lengths to sip. That is, again, there were people who were ready to represent at least women who could question the oppression or having a self of her own, creating such very beautiful frameworks. Most often, readers felt it like impossible subjects. How a woman can be like this strong? A woman can be this strong and that much qualitative to raise her voice. All those feelings may be there. All those doubts might occur. And it is untenable in a real social framework. So representations come in different ways. Poets who attempted to come up with such representations. We could see it's not completely, the writing sector was not completely devoid of that. But let's see what happens again. Such a woman the poet could desire only by breaking the cords that negate her. Her appearance would necessarily bring on, if not revolution, for the bastion was supposed to be immutable. Bastion, B-A-S-T-I-O-N. It's stronghold of a principle. So already a principle is there with much hold and much strength and more establishment. The phallocentrism, the principle of patriarchy. So this is very audacious stand on the part of a writer, whether male or female. You cannot always abstain the male contribution, because of course we know feminist identity is not exclusively allotted to women or the person with the identity of female sex or female. It should not be always a female or a woman for a person to be a feminist. Anyone and everyone who is contributing or who is thinking for the empowerment or equality or the rights of women, they are female. They are obviously feminists. So definitely this is a different stand on the part of the writer, but audacious stand, not even different, but very audacious stand on the part of the writers, whether male or female, because you are challenging the established traditions. You are going for a revolution. If not for revolution, she says in the beginning, you cannot expect a revolution out of certain female characters who are challenging, who are questioning the norms, but still there is hope left out. That's what Siso says. So that is again, that bastion is immutable. That's why revolution is very tough, very difficult. At least harrowing explosions. That explosions are to be expected on the part of this bastion. Bastion means the tradition, the principle which is already having strength. And such revolutionary stand, move on the part of women will have to expect such explosions on the part of the harrowing explosions. They will not sit peacefully. They will not keep quiet when this patriarchy sees the women for coming out and questioning the norms. At times it is in the fissure caused by an earthquake, though that radical mutation of things brought on by a material upheaval, when every structure is for a moment thrown off balance and an ephemeral wildness sweeps order away, that the poet slips something by for a brief span of woman. So of course earthquake, we know how drastic changes can be brought on earth and the surface, even in the lives and the ways of living. An earthquake or any natural calamity can cause. So in the same way, this new movement, new attempts, new coming out of women may have the impact of an earthquake on the whole of the well-established system of patriarchy, phallocentrism. Phallocentrism obviously means the male-centered, masculine-centered. The term is connected with the male sexual organ, and we know how interpretations came on behalf of their strength, every strength, every privilege being attached on behalf of the possession of this organ, and women were denied of the same because of the lack of the organ, the phallus. So this is the phallocentrism. Of course, they will not sit peacefully quiet. They will not keep quiet when they say the women for coming out and speaking out for themselves. But something can be, there is a positive vibe coming out. Siso is very hopeful. Thus did Christ expend himself in his yearning for the existence of sister lovers, maternal daughters, mother sisters, who never hung their heads in shame. So we could see certain writers who really wanted to portray, or who really dared to portray these. Till date we couldn't ever think about such a creation, such portrayals in literature, like sister lovers, maternal daughters, mother sisters, who never hung their heads in shame. The reference, if you place it in the present scenario, you can trace it back to lesbianism, more inclusive. The other, beyond the heteronormativity, we have traveled a long distance to incorporate, to accept other deviations within quotes, deviations in terms of the heterosexual normativity. They used to have the tendency to place every other sexual preferences as something deviant, something to be treated of. But now we know how those get incorporation, how we become more inclusive. But there was a time when everything was excluded. Only those which were taken for granted, which were appreciated, or which were already labeled as something normal, could be appreciated. So that to portray such characters, see, as a whole, if you take the list, sister lovers, maternal daughters, mother sisters, all these lead to the positive concept of sisterhood. If you want to take that in the advent or in the movement of second wave of feminism, when we come, of course this was a very important and very moving concept of sisterhood, women supporting each other, whatever role it may be, whatever the sexual orientation may be, on behalf of lesbianism, or on behalf of friendship, or on behalf of the equality in terms of the suffering within courts, whatever it may be. There had been a time, of course you could locate, where sisterhood became a very well established concept that went well together with the feminism. And here, of course, such portrayals had been there with these women characters who never hung their heads in shame. That also is very important. It's not just about portraying these characters, these abnormal, within course again, the characters who are the combinations beyond normativity according to the systems, but to make them very confident, to portray these characters to be very confident, to have the confidence in what they are doing, how they are living, is very important. Otherwise, you are creating such characters, very different characters, almost as a challenge to the established system. Everything fine, you are contributing in that regard. But problem is when you are not portraying them with the equal confidence. They doing all this. They go for a lesbian relationship. They challenge the patriarchal system. They speak out in public. But by the end of the day, the woman character is shown to be very guilty. She is cursing herself. See, such a portrayal will fail it in the roots itself. Because the portrayal as a whole, you portray it with much audacity, audacious stance, but later you're burning the effort yourself. If you are portraying them with a burning shame and all for what they are doing, for what they are, how they come out and they speak out, but they are not confident. They are portrayed as some cowards or throughout guilty. Then it will not work out, and that's what she says. Certain portrayals have been there whose women characters, in whatever way they stood as the challenge to the established norms, even then they never hung their heads in shame. That's very important. Once the palace of magistrate is restored, it's time to pay immediate bloody death to the uncontrollable elements. Maybe an earthquake effect. Sometimes all of a sudden a writer begins to takes the courage to portray such characters, fine. In the moment of that intuition, that real strength of writing or the peak of creativity, he or she writes down, creates such very audacious characters, women characters themselves. But maybe the effect may be something different. The person may be criticized, may be thrown at. I'm talking about place the essay in that during those days itself. Even now we know how much barriers, how much limitations are imposed upon creativity, discussions, everything. We know for sure. It's not something exclusive to certain time periods. We cannot always claim that. And so, okay, we will have to pay back once the patriarchy retaliates, when they again throw stones at for the portrayals. But still, there is no point in our not trying. There is no point in our giving up, being worried about all the outcomings or the consequences. Consequences must be there, obviously there, because we are fighting against, we are swimming against the strong current. But still, every flip of a second, CISO wants the writers, wants the women folk to be very confident in what they are doing. Consequences, aftermath, everything may be there. That's why she metaphorically talks about the earthquake effect. The system retaliating back, magistrate is restored. That is, again, you cannot always say that once feminism takes its turn against patriarchy, everything will be in one way or other contributing to feminist upheaval or the women empowerment. Definitely we will have to expect the reverse also, the negative impacts as well. But that should not be a point in giving up. Next paragraph, but only the poets, not the novelists, allies of representationalism. Only the poets, not the novelists. They are allies of representationalism. Because poetry involves gaining strength through the unconscious, and because of the unconscious, that other limitless country is the place where the repressed manage to survive. Women, or as Hoffman would say, fairies. That is again differentiation CISO makes between two Ranas. Very important point. The very established or very well appreciated, well read Ranas of any time. In literature, if you take poetry and fiction, we know all the time they could have a place of their own in the reading public. So we know how certain Ranas become outdated, obsolete after a trendy time of their own. But poetry and fiction, after they are coming into being, they never faded away. The trends changed, narrative techniques changed, poetic styles changed, but still those are there as the major literary genres of the canon. Canon, not even canon, but the whole of literary tradition in general. But she wants to make this kind of a differentiation in the effect when you talk about something genuine, something in depth, where the writers and readers have to go to the deeper side of our consciousness. She prefers one over the other. Only the poets, not the novelists, allies of representationalism. Because poetry involves gaining strength through the unconscious. Poetry is even more preferred, where unconscious, you have to stay away from your conscious. The conscious thoughts. In conscious thought, when you are more conscious about the surroundings, the patriarchy, the system, the rules, norms and regulations, you never can do anything creative. Or you are having a kind of setback when you have when you are completely involved in your conscious thought or conscious tension, stress and strain over the impact, the society, the norms in general. So she wants the writers to be very poetic, and limitless country it is. Place where the repressed manage to survive. Women, or as Hoffman would say, fairies. You can go like fairies. You place yourself in an unconscious level, and you become more expressive. At least for the time being, you can stay away from the daily life worries, the day-to-day life worries, so that you become more fairy-like and you are more strong and you are limitless. That sky is limitless, at least during the time of creativity. So obviously this reference is there in Room of One song by Virginia Woolf. You can see fiction is not bad. Fiction writing also is fine. But Woolf also points this out, that it's something somewhat simple. Why don't women write poetry? Because it takes more intellectual power, and intellectual expression needs limitless freedom. That's why poetry writing becomes a kind of challenge. And of course, Woolf also points out this in that regard. Here, Cicero also wants us to be limitless when you are willing to express yourself. She wants, at least for the time being, for the women folk to be out of the tension and the constraints of the social norms and all the barriers imposed upon them. So that's all with that part. Video number 9. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.